everyone, and welcome to the beginning of an epic journey. This is the story of Ashes of Vardamir, a fantasy series filled with mystery, war, destiny, and sacrifice. It follows a young warrior named Arendor, whose peaceful life is shattered when dark forces murder his family. On a path of revenge, he uncovers ancient powers within himself, meets allies who share his pain, and together they rise to build a new empire. But the road is not easy. Secrets, betrayal, and blood will test them at every step. This is a tale of friendship, war, and the fire of hope that burns even in the darkest times. If you love long stories, deep characters, and powerful twists, stay with me. Now, let's begin Episode 1 of Ashes of Vardamir. Episode 1, The Last Piece of Vardamir. Long before the blood and fire, there was peace. In the hidden valley of Vardamir, where pine trees whispered in the wind and mountains stood like ancient gods, there lived a noble family unlike any other. House Alderaan, keepers of old magic and sworn defenders of peace, had ruled these lands for generations. The family was led by Lord Calden Alderaan, a just man known for both wisdom and mercy. He walked without guards and listened to common folk as he would to kings. His wife, Lady Selith, was a healer whose hands could quiet a fever or mend a broken bone. Their two children, Arendor, 17, and Elena, only 8, lived lives filled with lessons, training, and laughter. Arendor was no ordinary boy. Even among noble sons, he was sharp, disciplined, and drawn to mystery. He trained with the swordmaster at dawn and studied forgotten languages at night. Yet for all his learning, he felt something pulling at him, a distant shadow in his blood he could not name. He often wandered the hills, away from the walls of the keep, drawn by dreams of fire and strange voices calling from the forest beyond the river. He would return late, always silent about what he saw. One day, while training in the courtyard, the steward brought a sealed letter to Lord Calden. It bore the mark of the High Council of Norvalis, the central powers who once ruled the continent before it shattered into warring states. Arendor watched his father's eyes narrow as he read. Later that night, he overheard the words whispered between his parents. "They fear us, Caldan, not for what we've done, but for what he might become. Let them fear, but they won't act yet, not while we still hold the valley." The next morning, strange men arrived at the gates, tall riders in black cloaks, silent and cold. Their leader bore a silver serpent pin. He claimed to be a diplomat. Arendor didn't trust him, neither did the dogs. But his father, ever the man of peace, welcomed them. That night, during a quiet dinner in the great hall, the fire crackled, music played, and Elena danced to the sound of lutes. Arendor turned to his father. "Why do we always trust those who hide their blades?" His father smiled gently. "Because if we don't, we become like them." The next day, Arendor went riding through the woods alone. Snow began to fall. In the silence of the forest, he felt a shift in the air, like something watching. He returned to the castle just before sunset, and the torches were not lit. The sky darkened. A shadow gathered beyond the trees, and the peace of Vardamir stood on the edge of its last breath. End of Episode 1. Episode 2, Serpent in the Snow. The torches of Vardamir, once always lit at dusk, remained dark. As Arendor entered the castle gates, a chill crept deeper than the mountain wind. The guards at the entrance did not greet him. They stood stiff, unmoving, and cold in their eyes. Their hands rested on the hilts of their swords, not out of readiness, but tension. Something had changed. Inside the halls, the usual warmth was gone. The servants whispered and moved quickly. Arendor's horse was taken without a word. He walked past the dining hall, where the guests, the black-cloaked diplomats, were being served. One of them locked eyes with him, sharp, narrow, and unblinking. He knew then, those were not diplomats. They were vipers. He found his father in the solar, seated before a fire that had burned too low. "You were gone too long," Galden said quietly, not looking up. "You missed the envoy's second message." "I trust their words as much as I trust a dagger in my back," Arendor replied. "They're not here to talk." His father turned toward him now. The strong, steady face of Lord Galden seemed aged in a single night. "They've offered something impossible. What is it?" "Unity, but on their terms. They demand your oath to the council in exchange for peace." Arendor stared. "You didn't agree, did you?" Galden stood, pacing. "Of course not. I told them I would never give up my son for a war they created. Then they'll attack." "Not yet," his father said. "They are still unsure what you are." Arendor felt it again, the strange heat in his chest, the whisper that had haunted his dreams. For years he'd hidden the truth. He could see things before they happened. Shadows that hadn't yet moved, faces of strangers he had not met. He had always believed it was a curse. Now he wondered if it was a mark. Later that night, Arendor met with his old swordmaster, Sir Tavros, in the training yard. The old knight said nothing at first, only handed him a heavier blade than usual. "It's time to stop practicing like a prince," Tavros said, "and start fighting like a target." They trained long past moonrise. Steel rang in the cold air. Arendor moved with speed and fury, but Tavros struck him again and again. "Good. Feel the pain. They won't duel you, boy. They'll surround you. They'll cut your legs first." Blood ran from his lip, but his eyes burned brighter. That same night, far beyond the walls, in the forests of Trailwood, a lone woman knelt by a frozen stream. Her cloak was patched with many colors, and her hands held a map soaked in old blood. She looked to the north, toward Vardamir. She whispered, "They'll come for him soon." I saw it. Then she rose and vanished into the trees, like a ghost following destiny. Back at the keep, Arendor stood at the tower window once more. Below him, the black-cloaked guests were leaving, but not all of them. Two had remained behind, slipping into the guest chambers, reserved only for trusted friends. His sister, Elena, ran to him, holding a carved wooden horse. "Why are the men here so quiet?" she asked. "They don't blink." One of them smiled at me without his eyes moving. Arendor knelt, brushing her hair gently. "Promise me you won't talk to them, not even one word." She nodded. He looked out again, toward the valley, toward the forest, toward a fate he couldn't yet name. And the snow began to fall harder, like ash, like warning. End of episode 2. Episode 3, Smoke Beneath the Stone. The morning after the guests departed, Vardamir woke to a false calm. Snow blanketed the rooftops, and villagers went about their chores. But within the stone walls of the keep, a quiet unease crept like fog. The black-cloaked men were gone, or so it seemed. Arendor walked the halls with a soldier's eyes. He noticed things now, how the guards had changed positions, how doors he had never seen opened were now closed, how some servants avoided his gaze. In the armory, he found Sir Tivros polishing an axe with a grim expression. "There are too many strangers inside these walls," the old knight said, "and too many of our own acting like shadows. Do you think they've bought our men?" Arendor asked. "Gold buys many things. Fear buys the rest." Tavros gripped his shoulder. "Watch your back, and your father's. I fear they came not just for words, but for positions." That evening, Arendor and his sister Elena sat by the hearth in the East Tower. She hummed a tune their mother taught her. He carved a small falcon from wood, smoothing the wings with care. "Will the snow fall forever?" Elena asked suddenly. Arendor smiled. "Number. Nothing lasts forever." She paused, then whispered, "Not even peace." He looked at her. Her eyes were too wise for her age. "Especially not peace," he said softly. As night fell, Galdan gathered his most trusted captains. Arendor stood beside him. The meeting was short and sharp. "Someone has leaked our records," Galdan said. "The Black Cloaks knew too much. The tunnels, the guard shifts, even my son's bloodline." Gasps rippled through the room. "They want the boy," said Lady Vera, the spy master. "They fear what he is becoming." "What am I becoming?" Arendor asked. No one answered, but Galdan looked at him long and hard. "You are more than you know, and that is why they fear you." That night, as most of the keep slept, Arendor left his chambers and wandered toward the old archives. He had questions no one would answer, but he never reached the door. A sound stopped him, like steel dragged over stone. He stepped into the shadows. A figure passed by, hooded, fast, silent. It did not walk like a man. It glided. In its hand, it held a silver dagger etched with serpent runes. It vanished down a servant's passage. Arendor followed. Deep below the keep, in the tunnels once used in wartime, he saw them. 3 figures in black, whispering, planning. One held a rolled map. Another held a bottle of black powder. The third said, "At midnight, the boy dies first, then the flame ends." Arendor's heart pounded, but before he could retreat, the stone beneath him shifted. A loose rock fell, echoing. The figures turned, and their blades flashed. End of Episode 3. Episode 4. The First Flame. The underground tunnel was silent, but for the slow, steady drip of melted snow from the stones above. Arendor crouched behind an ancient support beam, his breath shallow, the words he overheard echoing in his mind. At midnight, the boy dies first, then the flame ends. They were planning to kill him, tonight. The black-cloaked figures scanned the shadows with silver-bladed weapons. These weren't ordinary assassins. They moved like hunters born in darkness. Arendor couldn't run. Not now. He needed proof, and perhaps he needed blood. He stepped out from the shadows, blade drawn. Steel met torchlight. "Looking for me," he said coldly. The closest figure lunged. The clash was fast and brutal. Arendor dodged the first strike, slashed across the assassin's ribs, and kicked him into a stone pillar. Another came from behind. He turned just in time to block, sparks flying. He fought like he'd trained his whole life for this moment. And maybe he had. One fell, another escaped, but the third, wounded, hissed a word in a language Arendor didn't know, and bit down on something hidden in his mouth. He convulsed and died foaming. Poison, no evidence left behind. Sir Tavros found Arendor moments later, bloodied but alive. "So it begins," the old knight muttered, surveying the corpse. "They're inside the walls, rats in noble robes." They dragged the body to the hidden chamber beneath the East Tower. There, Galdan examined the body grimly. "They're not just assassins," he said. "This mark," he revealed a tattoo beneath the man's collar, "belongs to the Order of the Black Flame, outlawed for 100 years. They worship chaos." "Why me?" Arendor asked. "What do they want from That's just a myth. No, son, it's your inheritance. The Flameborn, a name whispered in ancient tales. A line of warriors said to be touched by fire itself, able to see glimpses of fate, to rise in times of collapse, hunted for centuries, forgotten by most. Arendor couldn't believe it. He wasn't special. He was just a boy who trained harder than most. But something inside him burned hotter now. Something waking. That night, Lady Silith took Arendor aside in the garden. Snowflakes fell between them. "Your father's right," she said. "You were born during the Red Eclipse, the same hour the last Flameborn died. We always feared the prophecy." "What prophecy?" She looked toward the mountain horizon. "That when the world forgets the flame, one will rise from ash. And to protect the world, he must first watch it burn." Arendor didn't sleep that night. Midnight came. He sat by the window of the highest tower, staring down at Vardamir, silent and white under the stars. Somewhere in the valley below, the last of the black-cloaked spies fled into the woods, and far to the east, the woman in the patchwork cloak reached the edge of the valley. She looked toward the keep, where a boy she had never met just killed his first man. And she whispered, "You survived. Good. We'll meet soon. Arendor Alderaan." End of episode 4.